Why do beautiful women make you emotionally exhausted? Let's face it, people will do anything, sometimes the most unreasonable things, just to avoid one very obvious truth: themselves. Facing their soul is so difficult that they would rather run away than look it in the eye. Carl Jung said so, and you have been fooled, not by some obvious enemy, but by society itself, by the stories told by the media, by what you see every day. And worse, you have been fooled by your instincts that have never been trained, only soothed by comfort. You think getting older means growing up? You think that just because a woman looks older, she's grown up? But here's what no one tells you. Many women never really grow up. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. This isn't an insult. It's a truth that few dare to admit. Carl Jung tried to warn you about this long before the world was ready to listen. While you're busy learning how to be the ideal man, strong, protective, and providing, no one has given you a map to navigate a relationship with a woman who is still an immature little girl on the inside, dressed up as an adult. And if you're honest with yourself, you felt it. You've seen her hesitation, her romantic dreaminess, her dependency hidden behind the charm, the emotional outbursts that make you feel like you're the bad guy just because you can't be the savior she's unconsciously looking for. You used to think it was immaturity or an unhealed wound. But Carl Jung had a word for it. Puella Aeterna, the eternal girl. A woman trapped in the psyche of a child. Not physically, but mentally, she is frozen, forever living in a fantasy world where life must always be magical, gentle, and carried by others. You dated her. Maybe you tried to help her. Maybe you even married her. But each time, you felt like you were holding a child who refused to walk with you like a real adult. Carl Jung didn't come up with this idea by accident. He studied it. He discovered that, while boys often escape adulthood by rebelling, many women escape it by daydreaming, by feeling, by dependence. She doesn't face life. She dances around it. She doesn't fix her broken self. She waits for someone else to do it for her. And if you're nodding your head now, chances are you've paid the price for it. You felt confused, hurt, guilty. Being the man in a relationship where the other person seemed okay on the outside, but wasn't there on the inside. And the worst part is, no one told you this. Not your dad, not your teachers, not those online love gurus. They taught you the tactics, but not the truth. The truth is, you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. Carl Jung taught that maturity is not a matter of age. It is the integration of the conscious and unconscious, the ability to take responsibility, and the courage to face discomfort. Puella Aeterna against all that. She clings to innocence because reality demands something she has never developed, a solid inner structure. You see it every time she avoids a major decision. Every time a problem arises, it's all your fault. She jumps from passion to passion, from job to job, from relationship to relationship, always chasing the thrill, but never building anything lasting. You think it's confusion, but it's a psychological defense mechanism. She's avoiding the very journey that Carl Jung called individualization, a painful but necessary journey to becoming a complete human being. And here's what haunts you. You don't know. You see all these patterns repeating themselves in the relationship, and you think it's love. You think it's your responsibility to fix it, and in doing so, you lose yourself. Because when a man stands before a forever girl, he is not only supporting her, he is shrinking himself. He is regulating his emotions. He is being humble. He is avoiding conflict. He is becoming a source of emotional stability for someone who refuses to stabilize herself. And he thought it was noble, but actually, it was a surrender. When you voluntarily take on her emotional burden, calming the storms she can't control, you think you're doing the right thing. You think it's love. But in reality, you're leaving your center. You're stepping into someone else's shadow, a place that doesn't belong to you. Carl Jung clearly warned, whatever you do not bring to light, consciousness will return to as fate. And that is exactly what happens to so many men. You don't understand why, but you keep getting pulled into a cycle of repetition with the same women. The emotions are intense. The initial infatuation is deep, but then you find yourself exhausted, confused, and completely lost. Why? because you're trying to build something lasting with someone who has no inner foundation. Puella Aeterna, the eternal girl, is not just young at heart. She is a person without inner structure. She resists maturity, resists responsibility, and most frighteningly, modern society rewards this model. Social media is filled with images of bright, carefree women who seem untouched by life. But that's just the personality, what Carl Jung defined as the compromise between who you are and who the world wants you to be. For Puella Aeterna, the personality is more than a mask. It's everything. Underneath it, nothing is constructed. And you, the nice, responsible man, step in and try to ground her. But you weren't made to ground someone else. You weren't taught to recognize that fear of maturity is disguised as freedom, that resistance to routine is labeled as individuality, and that inability to commit, often painted as keeping your options open. The truth is that Puella Aeterna lives in a state of suspension, forever romanticizing the potential, resisting the weight of the consequences. She wants the rewards of adulthood, but doesn't want to pay the price. She craves intimacy, but shrinks from the responsibility. She says she wants a real man, but when he shows up, she panics. Because a real man wants a real woman. Not a child wearing a mask. Not a girl who has never learned to stand on her own 2 feet. And here's what makes you feel guilty. Not because you were cruel, but because you stayed too long, too blind, too forgiving. You've seen her avoid serious conversations, blame circumstances, or you whenever responsibility comes up, but you still call it love. Carl Jung would call it projection. You project your deep qualities onto someone who has never developed them. You give her chaos a deep meaning. You romanticize her need to be rescued as if it were an emotional connection. But that's not love. That's unconsciously bumping into each other. Carl Jung once said, the subconscious mind is always looking for balance. That is, if one person doesn't grow, the other person will have to grow for both of you. And so you become her father, her therapist, her protector. You sacrifice your peace just to maintain a relationship where the other person isn't willing to grow with you. Here's the painful truth that Carl Jung wanted you to face. If a woman hasn't faced her shadow self, the dark sides, the unhealed wounds, the parts she refuses to see, then you're the one who's going to carry them, and they're going to crush you, literally. That's why so many men feel lost, angry, and even resentful after leaving a relationship like this. They're not just broken. They've been drained by someone who refuses to grow up. They keep waiting for her to step up and come along, but she never does. She clings to her youth, her fantasy, and the security of letting someone else take charge. You didn't stay because you were weak. You stayed because no one told you otherwise. But now you know. The illusion has been shattered, and the question now is no longer, why doesn't she grow up? But, why do you keep choosing people who don't want to grow up? Carl Jung believed that growth begins when we dare to face the parts of ourselves that we have always avoided. For women, it often means reclaiming the shadow, the repressed traits like ambition, anger, and independence. Society has taught them that these are unfeminine, but true maturity requires them to accept those parts. For men, the confrontation begins with clarity. No more confusing emotional turmoil with depth, no more confusing impotence with weakness. And most importantly, no more being fascinated by the idea of being needed. You wanted to be the hero in her story, and in doing so, you forgot about yourself. The truth is, you were not born to rescue anyone. You were born to lead yourself first. Not to dominate, not to control, but to discern, to see clearly, to walk firmly in reality. Carl Jung taught, a man who has not made peace with his inner feminine will always be manipulated by it in the outer world. And this is the root of the tragedy that so many men live in. When you don't do your inner work, you will be drawn to women who reflect the unhealed parts of yourself, the vulnerability you crave, the chaos you deny, or the validation you have never received. And so, you unconsciously build your identity around helping them. But an anchor tied to a sinking ship doesn't hold anyone. It just sinks. You were born to lead the way out of the fog, not to live in it forever. But because you don't understand what's going on, you make excuses. That she's just figuring things out. That she's been through a lot. That she's not ready. And maybe all of those things are true, But that doesn't change the larger truth. She doesn't want to grow up. She wanted comfort. She wanted to continue living in her fantasy world. And you, like most men, have confused that with femininity. But in fact, authentic feminine energy is not fragile, not weak. It is a focused, creative, rooted strength. When a woman is fully developed, her feminine energy is also fierce, determined. As for Puella Aeterna, the eternal girl, she has nothing. She only has two things: projection and acting. And if you stay with her long enough, you will find your strength, focus, and manhood drained away little by little, until you are just a pale shadow of the man you once were. But it doesn't have to end like that. Carl Jung doesn't just name the problem. He shows the way forward: personalization, the journey to becoming a complete human being. And for men, this journey begins with entering your true power, not physical strength, not aggression, the kind of insight that allows you to see a pattern before it repeats itself, the kind of insight that helps you recognize when you are being dragged into someone else's unfinished childhood, the kind of insight that is strong enough to say no to taking on things that don't belong to you, and most importantly, strong enough to walk, not because of bitterness, but because of the truth. Because once you see Puella Aeterna for who she is, you are no longer fooled by the illusion. She is not an angel, not a soulmate, not a mystery to be solved. She is a woman who has never met herself. She has never claimed her shadow side. She has never truly entered into mature femininity. And once you see that, something changes. The magic breaks. The guilt disappears. And for the first time in years, you can feel something. Free. If this is the first time you've seen things like this, let it awaken you. Not to punish you, but to wake you up. Because if you've spent years in relationships with immature women, that means you spent all those years sleeping in your own life. You were taught to pursue beauty, not depth. You were conditioned to prioritize chemistry over true compatibility. You were never taught to recognize psychological immaturity disguised as glamour. But now you know. Carl Jung said, "The greatest privilege of life is to become yourself." But you cannot become the man you were born to be while continuing to revolve around women who have yet to come into their own. You can't build a future with someone whose identity is built on avoiding the present. No matter how beautiful she is, how charming she is, how deeply connected she feels, she will drain your energy, your focus, your mission, and she won't even know she's doing it. Because she's still waiting for someone to write her story. But that's not your job. Your job is to write your own story. And now you have the clarity to do it. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it anymore. You'll start to notice. You'll see how she avoids responsibility, but expects total loyalty. She demands validation, but resists commitment. She plays the role of an adult, but never enters adult life. And you will stop. Stop making excuses. Stop chasing potential. Stop confusing emotional turmoil with passion. Because that is not love. It is dependence packaged in unconscious repetitions. Carl Jung did not present these archetypes to judge us. He offers them to help us recognize ourselves in that madness, and then step out of it. Pain is how you wake up. And once you wake up, you will never walk into those scenarios blindly again. You will no longer be the man who gets drained and beaten down by women who haven't completed their journey. You will become the man who leads his own life. The man who knows standards. The man saw clearly. And when you meet a mature woman, one who has faced herself, who has integrated her shadow, who has stood on her own 2 feet, you will realize that she is not there because she needs you, but because she is right for you. And that is the only kind of woman worthy of your time, energy, and heart. If this resonates with you, don't let it stop here. Share it. Spread it to another man who needs to hear it too. Stop living in the dark. This isn't some cheesy motivational video. This is the truth you've never been given. And now, there you have it. There is no more excuse. Let this be the last moment you are in the dark, and it's the first moment you truly grow up.